What's going on, toy fans? This is Doc Johnson again, and this is part 2 of my collection tour that I'm really excited about. It's still a work in progress, but just like most artists and people who kind of create things, it's kind of fun to share the progress and the things that you're doing and what you've got coming up, because really, let's face it, we're never really done with this, and I think all other toy fans can kind of appreciate that you're never really done putting a collection together, whether it's displaying it, adding more pieces to it, modifying it. It's fun. It's just a great, healthy hobby. Highly recommend it. But yeah, if you checked out part 1, again, I probably went way too long on the first part of the video. It was almost 40 minutes long. But all those that have tuned in, I appreciate it, and would love to hear some comments on it and just get some feedback. That's how I learn the best. Would love to hear what you think on these videos. But this is part 2. Again, I ended part 1. The end was the X-Men collection that I have, and now I'm getting ready to turn the corner of the next for part 2, and it starts with my Dungeons and Dragons collection. This was a great series of figures back in the early 80s, from 83 till about 85, I believe. Could be off by a year or two, and it was unique because it had 2 different kind of lines of figures. It had the posable ones that came with the accessories, and then there was also a non-posable lot of figures, and I'm still working on putting together a good complete list of those because it gets a little confusing. So you're seeing a mixture of both of these, and I love it. Starts with the Fortress of Fang front and center. That was one of my favorite play sets as a kid. It does come complete, and that includes all of these little stepping stones that you see here that move around. It's really hard to find one that has those in case most people are going to lose those. The treasure chest, the portable throne, and then the collapsible wall that's on the inside. A lot of times you'll see, if you're looking for these, make sure it's got the ladder involved well. Sometimes you'll find that missing, or some of the stalactites and stalagmites missing in between. It also comes with a weapons rack that a lot of times is missing as well. It's kind of up around the corner, if you can see it. There it is. And make sure that it has that if you're looking for one complete. And again, make sure the gate behind, or that's sitting right in front of the throne, the dragon throne, make sure it's got both skeleton skulls on there. Sometimes those are missing as well, but just a really cool piece to have. And again, you got Hook Horror over there on the side, and then on this side you got the bronze dragon, you got Destrier. Both Strongheart is the character, and he got both steeds in this because of his legs are molded into both saddles, so he was extra special. He got 2 different steeds to choose from. And then down here, again, I like, you'll see the backdrop. That's something I did just on simply a color printer, and looked up some Google images on Dungeons and Dragons, and I thought those would be a really cool images for backdrop, since I did not have, unfortunately, the cardback art that these came with. But I think that makes for a nice piece, especially with the yellow and the red behind there. I kind of like it. Again, it's a work in progress. I still got some more pieces to add to this collection as I get them. And the shield shooters, I think, are the harder ones to find in this set. And then, of course, the holy grail of this series is the Tiamat dragon, which is really cool. I have seen her going down in price, so I'm kind of excited about that. Maybe on one of these trips to the toy show coming up soon, I will be able to find one. So that is Dungeons and Dragons. As I move down, any McDonald's fans, all of us in the 80s that grew up with McDonald's Happy Meals, great memories, great times. They just don't make Happy Meals like they used to. And one of my little favorites toy lines from those Happy Meals was the Astro Snicks. Astro Snicks was actually a German company, and they were making these figures long before McDonald's got a hold of them. But in 1983, McDonald's got the license to produce these figures, and these figures are different from the German ones, obviously, because they have the little McDonald's logo on them. So in the McDonald's series, which is what these are, there was 14 of them. You can all tell because they got those nice little M's. That's just a nice little figure. I'd like to get the rocket ship that was a mail-in exclusive. It's a little bit harder to find, but that's something that's on my list to kind of add to that. And then I've heard rumors that there was actually a space saucer as well. I have not seen that, but I have kind of heard rumors of that, which I'll be interested to kind of research more and look for that as well. So that is Astro Snicks. And as we come down a little bit lower, we've got the Robin Hood Prince of Thieves collection that came out in 1992. There weren't a lot of figures in this series, so it's pretty easy to find. In fact, I just need I've got a Little John is actually on the way. You don't see him, but he has been ordered and should be here any day. And then that just means I'm missing one of the variations of Robin Hood himself. And again, I like the card backs in the back that you come with. Again, a pretty plentiful line. There wasn't a lot of figures in it, and they're not particularly rare, so not too bad to put together. And then underneath that, I just kind of started this one because I was a fan of the movies Predator. This line came out in the 90s. I kind of missed it during its original run, but I'm just now starting to kind of pick up the figures because I do like the way they look. So that's the only ones that I have so far, but I'd really like to complete that collection. I think from what I'm researching, the glow-in-the-dark Predator that came out is the most rare in that. So you can see I've kind of built the display, and it's all ready to welcome my brand new Predator figures as I get them at different toy shows and things like that. So that is that rounds out the corner area of this particular room. And then as we turn, we enter the domain as what I like to call Star Wars Street. And again, it's a work in progress, but this whole entire street on both sides is dedicated to everybody's favorite toy line of all time is Star Wars, probably the most collected of the action figure toy lines. And I try to section them off, although it's going to get really, really hard as they make new series and being able to kind of keep them all grouped together, but I do the best that I can. Again, I like the display. Nice tall ceilings give you a chance to not only display the figures, but also do the artwork and things like that. So there's not a lot of art. I just had that one really cool poster that I had, but I'm going to be adding some more pieces of art above this to kind of really make it shine. But this is the Power of the Force 2 collection that came out in 1995, which was kind of cool for all of us that grew up with the original trilogy, that they were redoing the original trilogy and making a new line of figures. This is the entire run of the figures, including the chase and the sneak previews and things like that. So this is the complete run of Power of the Force 2, all the way down, followed by the Power of the Jedi line, which really was just an extension of the Power of the Force 2. I am missing just maybe 2 or 3 figures out of that line, but I hope to complete that pretty soon. Again, they're pretty easy to find still, which is kind of nice. These figures are not expensive, even after all this time. You can get carded Power of the Force 2 figures for, just a couple of bucks, so it's not so bad. Underneath on the bottom here are the Cinema 3-packs that they came in. Some are cooler than others, but it was a nice different variation to the line itself. And again, they came with little neat display pieces. So this whole shelf completes the Power of the Force 2, minus the ones that came with vehicles, which I'll show you here in a minute. That's on a different shelf because I needed more room. And as we move on over, the top of the next one is dedicated to Episode 1. All 3, and again, the staircased layered look, I really like that. It really sets the figures off with a nice red backdrop because that was kind of a central theme color of Episode 1. Some poster, I'm going to add some more artwork as I find it. Of course, picture of Darth Maul, probably the best thing that came out of Episode 1. With that top layer, again, you see some empty space because I'm still kind of adding figures to it. I'm down to just a handful from Episode 1. Got that neat wooden sign. That was from Hobby Lobby that I thought really cool, since this entire street over here is called Star Wars Street. That kind of helps illustrate it. Underneath here is the Attack of the Clones, but I think they officially called it the Saga, Star Wars Saga Collection, because they started out with just Episode 2 figures, but then they kind of expanded it and included original trilogy type figures too. These came with some more detailed display pieces. Like Amidala, you can see that she came with this little balcony scene, and like the Luke down here came with messed up skiff and things like that. So these got a little more detailed with their accessories that they came with. Made them a little bit bulkier so they take up a little more room on the shelves, but still think they look really nice. So that is Episode 2. And then, of course, underneath that is the Episode 3 figures that came out. This one still need quite a few figures from this series. I just now completed a checklist, so it's going to be much, much easier. Again, they're still relatively easy to find. I use yellow for the backdrop, and again, you can see the Star Wars logos behind each one. Those are the actual card backs, and again, those are great pieces. I always include the card art and either the backings of the cards themselves or the little logos or things that it came with it, because they make really cool, they kind of add to your display. So that is episode 3. Again, need quite a few of that one, but that will be coming soon. And then of course, again, I've got lots of empty room for more shelves. I'm still building the layers. Again, it looks a little bit ugly right now, but it will be cleaned up as I get them. Those things will be kind of filled in, those spaces that you see here, and I'll be using lots of card art and packaging materials to decorate the backdrops. And then when you put the figures in front of them, it just really sets it up. Again, when I make displays, I like to make them expandable, meaning because there's always room for more figures, especially when you want to try to complete an entire line like I do. So I want to make sure when I do a display that it's something that's large enough to be able to complete the entire run. So that is episode 1 and 2. This entire unit shelf will be dedicated to episode 1, 2, and 3 rather. I may have to mix some of the ones because I don't think the rest of my episode 1 figures are going to fit up there, which means I'll have to kind of transfer some of them down below, but that'll be okay. Nice problem to have, I think. And then again, as we move on down Star Wars Street, you can see I've added some more shelves to make room for some more. You'll see no concrete in the back eventually. You'll see black is just a great backdrop color, so I'm going to be able to do that. Notice I've kind of changed this color scheme because throughout the Star Wars series, you'll notice that they used usually a different color depending on what the movie was. And again, they use red, sometimes they use blue, they use black, so I want to make sure and incorporate that in the display. So that is the newest display that I just recently built. And then that will be for figures like the original trilogy line, it was called, and also the 30th anniversary line, that was called, also the Clone Wars, and the vintage collection will all be added to that particular shelf on Star Wars Street. And again, over here, these are the original vintage series. I realize they made a new vintage series, but this is the original one that came out starting in '77. And again, I wanted those kind of in its own separate place. As you turn, there's 2 entries into Star Wars Street. This is one of the entries, the main one, so it's kind of nice to start with the brand that started it all. So I've got the display done. Obviously, I still need some more figures to complete the line. They're still relatively easy to find in loose, condition. Some of the weapons get a little bit harder, but a lot of times you can buy bulks of different weapons if you just pay attention and you kind of look underneath the tables at some of these toy shows. It's a really cool way. You can find all sorts of weapons and things like that to complete. So it's kind of neat. It's like trying to complete puzzle pieces when you're getting these figures, but still need several, probably half the line from the vintage, but these are the ones that I had as a child growing up that I held on to, and will be anxious to complete that line. So the vintage will be up here. Again, as we come down here, this shelf will be dedicated to the extension lines. I call them like Rogue One, and then eventually Solo, and then if they happen to make any from the Mandalorian series, they will be featured on these next series of shelves that I built. Again, they'll have backdrops, they'll have staircases to kind of level them up. Again, thought that was a neat little metal sign I found online once to serve as a backdrop. So this whole shelf will fit any of the other lines that are currently out there in the 3 3/4 line. So again, lots of expansion. And again, the long distance view from Star Wars Street. Again, we started on that other end where you can see kind of where the AT-AT up there in the corner across. That's going to be eventually, all of this will be Star Wars Street. And then Star Wars Street on this side, I'll have these larger shelves put in because that will fit the vehicles and the larger play sets. As you can see up here, we've got the old Dagobah that I've had as a kid. Unfortunately, I need to find a replacement sponge, to put together in place of the quicksand, which long ago dry rotted away, but I hope to get that fixed. There is Jabba the Hutt, one of the pieces I remember unwrapping as a kid that was a present under the Christmas tree, which was fantastic. Neat stories. I love hearing people's stories about different things that they got as kids. Over here is the one of my other personal favorites, the Ewok Village, and I think I'm missing just one handrail and then the portable chariot, which I'm hoping to find sometime. I could probably get on eBay and look for those, but everything else is intact, which is cool. There's the original land speeder. This was the remote control version of the land speeder. Still need the glass that went on around the front. And again, these entire shelves will be dedicated to all things Star Wars, things that I find cool and interesting, along with and I put most of the vehicles and things like that over on this side. There's the original Millennium Falcon. And then a lot of these are the Power of the Force 2 / Power of the Jedi. This is where I will be housing all of those vehicles and play sets, and the figure and vehicle 2-packs, like the Jabba, Han Solo, the Tauntaun and Luke, Stormtrooper and Bantha. Dewback, excuse me. There's Power of the Force 2 Millennium Falcon. That one is complete. There's the Y-Wing Fighter. Here's a lot of the figure and vehicle 2-packs. I love that A-Wing Fighter, one of my favorites. Rancor and Luke 2-pack. Again, we drop down, and because I'm such a completist, I even picked like an oddball. It was part of the Power of the Force 2 line. It was the CD-ROM interactive game, but it did come with a Han Solo figure that you can see sitting in the cockpit there. That is actually part of the line. So again, just like in the Episode 1 line, there was a Pod Racer video game, handheld video game, and it came with a little Anakin figure, and I picked that up. I consider that part of the actual line. That's how much of a completist I am, but I find that really fun and challenging. So that is, I like that Hoth playset in the background, the Probot. I put, of course, Jabba and Leia and the Barge Gun Cannon 2-pack. So again, the rest of these shelves, again, lots of room. There's the Power of the Force 2 land speeder. There's Luke. And again, lots and lots and lots of room. I'll give you a view with my back to where we started. So again, that will Star Wars Street on both sides. Again, lots of room. I've kind of made it into an alleyway. Of course, that's my original Star Wars movie poster, which I absolutely love and I've held on to. Love it. It's in a frame, matted in black. It looks great there. I'm going to surround it by some more artwork and all that, so it really makes it pop and stick out. But that's a nice way to exit Star Wars Street. Get over here in the corner. I call it Comic Book Corner. I showed you some of my comic books in the last video, but you can see, again, I got them all nice and neat in file cabinets, along with what particular character they are. Like that one is all Thor. Top one, Daredevil. Back here in the corner, some of my favorites, that's of course Batman, DC Comics. I've got, again, probably 25 to 30,000 comic books stemming from Silver Age mostly through the Bronze Age and Modern Age, so it's lots and lots. Again, I'm a completist. I have Batman number 100 through its original run of 713. That's one of my favorite complete collections. But those are all my comic books. I kind of stash there underneath a staircase here, which is kind of a nice, it makes a little nook, hence the name Comic Book Corner, because it doesn't take up a lot of space underneath there, and it houses everything. I can get to them as I need. Anybody remember these old movie discs? Aren't these cool? I just picked these up recently. I got Conan the Destroyer. I've got the Flash Gordon, and then I've got the Lord of the Rings that was up in the last video. But man, those were so cool for you youngsters. These are actually movies. They're hard discs before laser discs. They came with the great art on the back of them, and it looks like a giant 8-track tape, except it's very thin. And what you would do is take this, and then you had these large players, and you would slide it in the little slot, and it would play it. It would actually play the movie. Very cool. These did not last long, obviously, because they were big and bulky. But I certainly remember those, you know, these big movie discs. And I found all 3 of those and got them for absolutely next to nothing. Thought they were really cool. So anybody else has those? I'd love to hear more of them, because I don't see a lot of people that collect those. But very cool, those movie discs. Again, I have Conan the Destroyer. I've got the original Flash Gordon movie, and then the original animated Lord of the Rings movie. You can see the staircases. I've got again, my superheroes and the backdrop of, that's where I originally started, up at the top of those stairs on video number 1. And again, up on the top there, you'll see that I dedicated all things to, that's Indiana Jones. That is the playset that came out in 2008 when the Kingdom of the Crystal Skulls came out. As I turn another corner, again, a work in progress, excuse my ladder and my comic box. This is the Simpsons section, I call it. This is the Playmates Simpsons that came out starting in 2000 till about 2006 6 or 7. They made a lot of lines. I have the first 7 series, including the big packs that came with the interactive play sets. And we'll be looking forward to completing that line. Not too hard to complete. I think the really tough figures, or the most expensive ones, are the ones that came out of the Toy Fair magazine that I talked about in my first video. Sometimes Toy Fair magazine would make exclusives, and they made an exclusive glow-in-the-dark Homer in his nuclear reactive hazmat suit, and then they made I believe a Homer with boxing gloves. So those two are probably the most valuable out of the series because they were exclusive and a little bit harder to find. You couldn't find them in stores. But I love The Simpsons. Grew up with them. They're still on, and they did a great job. I mean, they look just like they do on the animated series, which is nice. And they display really well and very easily. There's the Springfield Main Street play set up there, which makes a great backdrop. But The Simpsons, lots and lots of great. They made every single of the characters except for, anybody can catch the Capital City Goofball. I always wish they would have made the Capital City Goofball mascot. Anybody who watches The Simpsons will know who I'm talking about. You know, they never actually made him out of all the characters, so that is a little bit of a bonus trivia for you. Again, room for expansion. That way I can complete the Simpsons collection. It will be completed there on the bottom eventually. And as I move over here, this is some of the newer shelves that I'm coming up with. You'll see at the top, again, a very underrated line of figures that came out in 1990, Dick Tracy. I was a big fan of the Dick Tracy movie, and when they made the figures, had to have them. I love those 2 cars. Those are fantastic. That's Dick Tracy's police car. And then down below there is Big Boy Caprice's gangster car. Amazing pieces. And I think I get more comments on those when people come down here to look at this entire collection. We're talking superheroes all the way through Star Wars, all those lines. I get more stops and more questions about this Dick Tracy line for some reason. And I think it's because of these cars that really stand out. You can see, again, I put the images of Dick Tracy, the animated, and using some of the card back behind there, which gives it a nice backdrop. And again, the movie symbol that you'd find on the movie poster, that Warren Beatty, came out in 1990. I thought it was a really cool set of figures. I'm down to, of course, the one that's pretty much impossible to find, but you know what? It's on my list. I'm going to find it, and that is the Blank, which was, as anybody that's watched the movie knows, was actually Breathless Mahoney, which was Madonna's character, but the character of the Blank was only available, I think, in Canada, and it's very difficult to find. I've never seen one in person. I've only seen them online and different discussions and things like that, different photo images, but that is the last one I would need to officially complete the Dick Tracy line. But I like those figures, and I like the movie, so I think they look really good there. Its own little section. Underneath now is Indiana Jones. Again, these are the figures that came out in 2008, not the original ones. I really like the originals, and I think I'll probably add them to my collection eventually. But for now, this is the 2008 line that came out, and this goes with the playset that I just showed you on the top of my file cabinet. And again, nice little display piece along with the glass that came with, I think, Pepsi, which came with Pizza Hut back in the days. They used to make these glass series that you could go and get, which are really cool. Underneath there, I got my one lone Resident Evil figure. I might try to go back and see if there were any more Resident Evil figures made. It was a great video game line, so if anybody has any more, can tell me more about Resident Evil figures, I'm definitely interested in hearing. This one came out sometime in the late 90s. I just picked him up at a flea market, thought he was cool, but I might go back and try to see about the rest of that line. And then, of course, down here eventually is going to be my Muppets collection. I was a Muppets fan as a kid, so I'm just now creating that display piece that will house the Muppet figures that came out, I think, around 2008. There was a series of figures that were really awesome, but for now I have the commemorative glass that came through Pizza Hut, I believe, in the early 80s after the Great Muppet Caper movie, which was in 1981. So again, they used to make really cool glasses, actually made out of glass, that you could get promotional at a Pizza Hut, which I thought was neat. And again, room for more. I've got a nice blank space. This will probably be where more of my Lord of the Rings figures will go eventually. Whenever I don't have room, I showed you guys the Lord of the Rings, the other video, but just in case, here's a quick review of that figure line. Love it, both of them. It's both the Armies of Middle Earth, which is the small series, followed by the larger series that started with the beginning of the Fellowship of the Ring. And I probably won't have enough room on this particular unit to get them all, which is why I went ahead and built this one over here on that wall to house that one. So guys, that is part 2. Again, we are not done with the fun. This is, again, a very, very large collection of figures. I have, you know, we're talking about 15,000 different action figures and different lines that I'm looking to complete from the 70s through the 2000s. I showed you guys, you know, starting with my Eternia section, all the He-Mans. And the last in this series will be part 3. Please be looking for that soon. That is what I call the Hall of Heroes. And that is dedicated to all things Batman and the DC Comics superheroes, along with G.I. Joe and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And those are all together because they are all heroes. Batman is a superhero. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are the heroes in a half shell. And G.I. Joe is the real American hero. So I thought it would be fitting to dedicate those all to one large section of the room, and that will be the next part. And then the very last part, again, the fun goes on and on. The last video I do will be dedicated to my Kenner starting lineup figures. And I don't see a lot of starting lineup collectors, but it was a great series of sports figures, and I've got a section dedicated to that. And then that would complete my action figure collection line. But I would love, love, love to hear from you all, so please take a chance and tune in and watch my videos. Would love to hear what you think, and just share different ideas. And if you guys have collection rooms that I have not seen yet, please send a link. I'd love to check them out. I love supporting the hobby, and I love seeing how you guys display your pieces, what you guys collect, what are your favorites, and why. And it's just great stuff. Guys, have a really, really happy 4th of July, and I will see you on the next video.